It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Hey folks, welcome to the program. I want to introduce you to a professor, crop and soil and environmental sciences from the University of Arkansas. His name is Jason Norsworthy. Jason, thanks for coming on the program this morning.
Great to be with you, Paul.
Okay, I wanted to have you on because I have done some interviews about dicamba, plant board, things like that, and I'm at this point kind of unclear. I would just like for you've actually done a lot of research into dicamba, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so I mean, what can you tell us about it? What is dicamba, and what did you find? Is it a volatile product? Can you tell us what volatility actually means in the agricultural community?
Well, let me start by telling you a little bit about dicamba. Dicamba is a herbicide that's been around for now approximately 50 years. It's a herbicide that we have routinely used very early in the year. We use it typically in March, maybe even early April, for what we call a burn-down herbicide. Conditions during application are relatively cool. We never have used it late in the year. I would say June, July. It is not a herbicide that has been typically used within crops. It has a registration in corn and grain sorting, so individuals could say, yes, it has been used there, but typically there it would be a May application, and then also the rates that we apply it in corn and grain sorghum are much lower than the rates that we're now using in these dicamba crops, these extend crops as individuals refer to them. Okay. And you mentioned the word volatility. And I think that's really the crux of where we get at this. When you take a herbicide such as dicamba that has a volatile component to it, and you begin to spray it on during warm days, or maybe it's even a warm day a few days after the application itself, at that point the herbicide begins to gas off, and the applicator has no control of where that herbicide is going to move.
Okay, so you said that the one thing that I didn't know. For 50 years, this has been around?
Yeah, this herbicide, I think, was discovered in the early 60s, commercialized in the late 60s. So we have used this herbicide, and I contend we've used it with a great deal of success. We just have not used it at the time of year that we are trying to apply it today in these dicamba crops.
Okay, so why the change all of a sudden? I mean, if it's been around for 50 years, why? When was there a consensus, or did people just start to use it in warmer years? Is there a history here that we need to know?
Absolutely. So I think, if I were to mention Roundup Ready crops, I think anyone that's somewhat familiar with agriculture understands Roundup Ready crops. In 1996, Roundup Ready soybean came onto the market, and prior to that, we could not spray Roundup over the top of soybeans. And a similar situation has occurred with dicamba. In 2015, cotton was registered. The dicamba products were not registered. 16, we had soybean that came on the market. And in 2017, the EPA allowed dicamba to be used on these, quote, dicamba crops, these ones that have a trait or gene inserted to them that allows for resistance to the herbicide dicamba. And with that, growers began to use dicamba to try to control pigweed, which is the number one weed in cotton as well as in soybeans in the state of Arkansas.
Okay, so they were not using dicamba on cotton before that time?
That is correct. Dicamba kills cotton. Dicamba kills soybean. Actually, soybean is one of the most sensitive plants that exist in the environment today, or in our communities today. It's one of the most sensitive plants to dicamba.
Okay. So, as a scientist, a crop and soil, tell us about your research in terms of, I know it's been around for 50 years, but I know you have been doing a lot of research on this because of this issue of volatility, correct?
No, that is correct. Again, there really wasn't a lot of concern with volatility. Volatility is a function of temperature. As temperature increases, volatilization, or the ability of a herbicide to gas off like dicamba, increases, and actually can increase quite substantially as a result of high temps. And I come back, we really had no issues as long as we were using this in March and April under these cooler conditions. It did not seem to convert over to a gas and cause any major issues. Also, you might also just remember, in April, we don't have a lot of soybeans that are up at that time of year. But once we move this over into June and July, these applications, what we have found is that under the environmental conditions that we have here in Arkansas, it does convert to a gas. And at that point, what we have found the last several years is that a high percentage of the damage that we're seeing in these fields appears to be a function of volatility. And with that, when you spray hundreds of thousands of acres of a product like dicamba that has a volatile component to it over a short period of time, which in northeast Arkansas there's been a lot of spraying to control pigweed, and rightfully so. Pigweed is a major issue there. But when that happens, you begin to load the atmosphere with this gas, and we begin to observe landscape damage. And it's not only damage that we're seeing on soybean, but we're also seeing damage on a lot of sensitive trees across the landscape. I know sycamore appears to have a high degree of sensitivity. Cypress trees, there's certain oak trees that are damaged. And so with that, then you begin to ask yourself, what is the long-term consequences of this when you begin to have landscape damage?
Let me ask you this. Again, we're talking with Jason Norsworthy, a professor of crop and soil and environmental science with the University of Arkansas. Is it possible to apply this stuff in the summer months and it not be so volatile? Is that a possibility?
I think it's going to be very challenging to, when you say summer months, I think that there is some potential to use it very early in crops. We continue to move our planting dates further and further up each year, and we'll plant soybeans at even northeast Arkansas as early as mid-April, weather contingent. We'll plant cotton last week of April, and I think there is some potential to use it as what we call a pre-emergence herbicide, maybe at the time of planting, or if we can get our crops planted early enough, maybe we can even get one post-emergence application in the crop, come over the top of the crop once it emerges. But that has got to be very early in the growing season. You take a look at the data and the complaints that have occurred in Arkansas from dicamba. There was over 1,000 complaints in 2017, and I think there was 200 complaints this past year. But when we look at the data, those complaints are occurring, really they're occurring in mid to late June, early July, and the symptomology from dicamba, the injury shows up about 14 to 21 days after you spray. So what that tells us is that, no, you're not going to be able to go out there and make a June application and keep this material in the field because, again, the research indicates that it's volatilizing and begins to move in multiple directions.
But backing up, so 50 years, it's been around for 50 years. Is there something about it specifically that it really works well? Volatility aside, does it work better than other other chemicals like that are on the market?
Yeah, yes, it's a very good product. Again, it's a product that we've used in Arkansas. Early 2000s, we began to document a weed that we call glyphosate-resistant mare's tail, or mare's tail, or horseweed is what some individuals may call it. And at that point, we began to really incorporate it into our burn-down weed control programs because glyphosate or Roundup is no longer working, and this herbicide provided a great tool for us in terms of controlling a weed that we needed to clean out of the fields prior to planting. So it has some strong use there. And I'll tell you, it has very good activity on Palmer amaranth, or pigweed, as the growers call it in crop. But the question really begins again to center around volatility. There's a risk and reward associated with applications, and there's not a lot of risk with these extremely early season applications, but as we move later and later in the year, that risk increases substantially.
It's fascinating. It is absolutely a fascinating issue to me, and I want to continue to report on it and kind of track what happens with all of this. And I appreciate your research, and appreciate, Jason, you coming on the program and telling us about this, because I think a lot of people out there, are not farmers. Most of us aren't. And this is a big deal because, it's a big industry here in the state. So I really appreciate you coming on, Jason Norsworthy.
Well, no, I appreciate you, Paul. Thanks a lot.
All righty. All right. Have a great day.